February 20th, 1900, Volume 3. Jesus is the lamp of all in heaven. My benign Jesus continues to come. After I received communion, he renewed in me the pains of the crucifixion, and I was left so numb that I felt the need for a relief, but I did not dare to ask for it. After a while, he came back as a baby, and he kissed me all over. Milk flowed from his lips, and I drank in large gulps that most sweet milk from his most pure lips. Now while I was doing this, he told me, "I am the flower of the celestial Eden, and the fragrance I spread is such that at my perfume the whole of heaven remains captivated. And since I am the lamp that sends light to all, so much so as to keep them immersed in it, all of my saints draw their little lamps from me. So there is no light in heaven which has not been drawn from this lamp." Ah, yes, there is not even the smell of virtue without Jesus, and even if one went up to the highest heavens, there is no light without Jesus. February 20th, 1907, Volume 7, Lack of Correspondence to Grace. It continues with him always in silence, in passing and like a flash. I spend my days in bitterness as though dazed. It is as if my whole interior had been struck by a thunderbolt without being able to move either forward or backward. I myself am unable to say what has happened in my interior. I believe it is better to keep silent than to speak about it. Then this morning he came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, one who does not correspond to my grace lives like those birds which live by thievery. In the same way the soul does nothing but live by thievery. She steals my grace, she lives and does not recognize me, and she even offends me." And he disappeared like a flash, leaving me more dazed than before. February 20th, 1919, Volume 12. In each created thing, God placed a relation, a channel of graces, a special love between the Supreme Majesty and the creature. Luisa is called to give God homage for each thing in the name of all. Continuing in my usual state, I spent it with my sweet Jesus. He made himself seen now as a baby, now crucified, and transforming me in him, he told me, "My daughter, enter into me, into my divinity, and run in my eternal will. In it you will find the creative power, as though in the act of delivering the machine of the entire universe. In each thing I created, I placed a relation, a channel of graces, a special love between the Supreme Majesty and the creature. But the creature would not consider these relations, these graces, this love. Therefore God should have suspended the creation, which was not recognized nor appreciated. But in seeing my humanity, which would appreciate it so well, and which for each created thing would have its relations with the Eternal One, recognizing him, loving him, not only for itself, but for the whole human family, he did not look at the wrong of his other children, and with highest contentment extended the heavens, dotting them with stars, knowing that those stars would be many and varied relations, innumerable graces, rivers of love, which would flow between my humanity and the Supreme Being. The Eternal One looked at the heavens and remained content in seeing the immense harmonies, the communications of love which he had opened between heaven and earth. Therefore he moved forward, and with one single creative word he created the sun, as the continuous relator of his Supreme Being, providing it with light and heat, placing it suspended between heaven and earth, in the act of holding everything, of fecundating, warming, and illuminating everything. With its searching look of light, it seems to say to everyone, I am the most perfect creature of the divine being. Reflect yourselves in me, and you will recognize him. He is immense light. He is endless love. He gives life to everything. He needs nothing. Nobody can touch him. Look well at me, and you will recognize him. I am his shadow, the reflection of his majesty, his continuous relator. Oh, what oceans of love and relations opened between my humanity and the supreme majesty. So everything you see, even the most tiny flower in the field, was one more relation between creator and creature. Therefore, it was right that he demanded recognition, one more love from the creatures. I undertook everything. I recognized him, and I adored the creative power for all. But my love towards so much goodness is not content. I would like other creatures to recognize, love, and adore this creative power, and, as much as it is possible for creature, take part in these relations which the Eternal One had spread through the whole world, rendering homage to this act of creation of the Eternal One in the name of all. But do you know who can render this homage? The souls who live in my will. As soon as they enter it, they find all the acts of the Supreme Majesty as though in act. And since this will is in everything and in every one, they remain multiplied in everything, and are able to render honor, glory, adoration, and love for all. Therefore come into my will, come with me before the divine height, to be the first one to give homage to the Creator of all. I am unable to say how I entered this divine volition, but always together with my sweet Jesus. And I saw this supreme majesty in the act of delivering the entire creation. Oh God, what love! Each created thing received the mark of love, the key of communication, the mute language to eloquently speak of God. But to who? To the ungrateful creature. I don't know how to continue to explain. My little intelligence was lost in seeing the many openings of communication, the immense love which came from them, and the creature, who rendered all these goods as though extraneous. Then, together with Jesus, multiplying ourselves in everyone, we adored, thanked, and recognized the creative power in the name of all. And the Eternal One received the glory of creation. Jesus disappeared, and I returned into myself. February 20th, 1924, Volume 16. Luisa is the first one in the Church to live in the divine will. Jesus has not manifested it to anyone before. It means to make the pure joys of the purpose of creation return to Jesus. It is a continuous exchange between human will and divine will. With all that my sweet Jesus has told me about his most holy will, I was thinking to myself, how can it ever be possible that until now there has not been one soul who lived in the divine volition, and that I am the first one? Who knows how many others there have been before me, and in a more perfect way, a more active way than I. But as I was saying this, my always adorable Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, why do you not want to recognize the gift, the grace, your mission of having been called in a way all special and new to live in my will? If there had been other souls in my church before you, since the living in my will is the most important thing, which interests me the most, and for which I care very much, there would have been traces, rules, and teachings in my church of the one destined to live in my will. There would have been the knowledge, the attraction, the effects, and the goods contained in this living in my will. If there had been many other manifestations, I would have used my power, letting the sublime way of living in my will shine through. In view of my great delight and in seeing myself honored by the soul with the glory of my own will, I would have pushed that soul so much that she could not have resisted manifesting what I wanted. Just as there are sayings and teachings on living resigned, patient, obedient, and so forth, there would have been this as well. It would have been really funny and strange if I had kept hidden the thing which I love the most. Rather, the more one loves something, the more he wants to make it known. The more delight and glory a way of living brings me, the more I want to diffuse it. It is not in the nature of true love to hide what can make others happy and rich. If you knew how I longed for this time of the coming to light of my little newborn of my will, to make you live in my volition, what a court of grace I prepared in order to obtain the intent, you would remain stunned and would be more grateful and attentive to me. Ah, you don't know what it means to live in my will. It means to make the pure joys of the purpose of creation, my innocent pleasures for which I created man, return to me. It means to remove all the bitterness that the perfidious human will gave me almost at the dawn of creation. It means a continuous exchange of wills, human and divine, as the soul, fearing her own, lives from mine, while mine keeps filling the soul with joys, love, and infinite goods. Oh, how happy I feel in being able to give whatever I want to this soul, because my will contains such capacity as to be able to receive everything. Therefore there are no longer divisions between me and her, but stable union in working, in thinking, in loving, because my will compensates for everything. So we remain in perfect accord and in communion of goods. This had been the purpose of the creation of man, to make him live as our own child and to share all our goods with him, so that he might be fully happy, and we might be amused with his happiness. Now to live in my will is exactly this, to have the purpose, the joys, the feasts of creation returned to us. And you say that I should have kept it hidden in my church without manifesting it? I would have turned heaven and earth upside down. I would have overwhelmed the souls with an irresistible strength in order to make known that which will be the fulfillment of creation. Do you see how much I care for this living in my will, which places the seal upon all my works, so that all of them may be complete? It may seem to you that this is nothing, or that there are similar things in my church. No, for me, on the contrary, it is the all of my works, and you must appreciate it as such, and be more attentive in fulfilling the mission I want from you. February 20th, 1928, Volume 23. How one who must enclose a good in order to give it to creatures must enclose the whole of that good within himself. This happened to the Virgin and to our Lord. What unity means. The privations of Jesus become longer, and I live only at the mercy of the divine Fiat that has constituted itself life of my little soul. It seems to me that my beloved Jesus, entrusting me to it, hides behind the veils of its light, only to spy and stand at attention to see whether I will always follow his adorable will. Oh God, what pain to be within an immensity of light and be unable to find the way, and move my steps to find him whom I love, who formed me, and who has told me so many truths, that I feel within me like many divine lives palpitating, that make me comprehend who he is, whom I want and do not find. Ah, Jesus, Jesus, come back. How can you do this? You make me feel your heartbeat in my heart, and you hide? But while I was pouring myself out, I thought to myself, maybe Jesus does not find, either in me or in others, the dispositions to receive the life of more of his truths, and so as not to let these lives remain suspended, he keeps silent and hides. But while I was thinking this, my highest good, Jesus, moved within my interior, in the act of moving his steps to come out of me, and he told me, poor little daughter of mine, you have become lost in the light and cannot find him whom you search for with so much love. The light forms huge waves before you and forms the barriers to finding me. But don't you know that I myself am the light? I myself am the life, the heartbeat that you feel? How could my will ever have its life in you if your Jesus were not in you, giving the field to carry out the operating of my will in your soul? Therefore calm yourself. Now you must know that one who must be the bearer of a good must centralize within himself all the fullness of that good, otherwise the good would not find the way to go out. Now, since I must centralize in you the kingdom of my will, nothing of it must be missing, because its light disposes you to receive all the truths necessary to form its kingdom. And if the other creatures are not disposed to receive all the lives of the truths of my fiat, at the most I will not give you the capacity to manifest them, as happens many times, but to you, as the depository, nothing must be lacking. The same happened in the Queen of Heaven. Since she was to be the depository of the incarnate Word, who was to give me to the human generations, I centralized in her all the goods of the redeemed ones, and all that was needed in order to be able to receive the life of a God. Therefore the height of my mamma possesses the sovereignty over all creatures, and over each act and good that they can do, in such a way that, if they think in a saintly way, she is the channel of holy thoughts, and therefore has sovereignty over them. If they speak, if they operate, if they walk in a saintly way, the origin of all this descends from the Virgin, and therefore she has the right and sovereignty over words, steps, and works. There is no good that is done that does not descend from her, because since she was the primary cause of the incarnation of the Word, it was right that she be the channel of all goods, and have the rights of sovereignty over everything. The same happened also with me. Since I was to be the Redeemer of all, I was to contain within myself all the goods of redemption. I am the channel, the font, the sea, from which come all the goods of the redeemed ones, and I possess by nature the right of sovereign over all the acts and goods that creatures do. Our reigning is not like the reigning of creatures, who dominate and reign over the external acts of them, and not even all of the external acts, but know nothing about the internal ones. Nor do they have the right of sovereignty, because the life, the thought, the word of their subjects does not come from them. On the other hand, from me comes the life of all the internal and external operating of creatures. Therefore creatures should be acts, such that the act of my celestial mother and mine hangs over each act that they do, and, as sovereigns, they form it, direct it, and give it life. After this I continued along my round in the divine will, and as I united myself to the unity that my first father Adam possessed before sinning, my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, you have not comprehended well what unity means. Unity means centralization and origin of all the acts of creatures, past, present, and future. So before sinning, when he possessed our unity, Adam enclosed within his thoughts the unity of all the thoughts of creatures, the unity of all words, works, and steps. Therefore I would find in him, in my unity, the origin, the continuation, and the end of all the acts of the human generations. In my unity he enclosed everyone and possessed everything. So, my daughter, as you rise to that same unity that he left, you take his place, and placing yourself in the origin of everyone and of everything, you enclose within yourself the very acts of Adam, with the whole retinue of all the acts of creatures. To live in my will means, I am the origin of all. From me descends everything, just as everything descends from the divine Fiat. So I am the thought, the word, the work, and the step of all. I take everything, and everything I bring to my Creator. It is understood that Adam was supposed to possess and enclose everyone, had he not withdrawn from our will, and had he always lived in our unity. And if it were so, the human generations would all have lived in our will. So one would have been the will, one the unity, one the echo of all, placing everything in common, so that each one would have enclosed everything within himself. February 20th, 1938, Volume 35. How Jesus, in his incarnation, formed from himself one Jesus for each creature to exist, so that each one of them might have one Jesus at her disposal. I am in the arms of the divine volition that loves me so much, and to show me how much, it wants to tell me continuously its eternal and long love story, adding always new surprises, to the extent that one remains enraptured, finding it impossible not to love it. Only the ungrateful and mindless would not. Then the divine Fiat was making me aware of all it did in the descent of the Word upon earth, and my Jesus, repeating his usual little visit, all goodness told me, "My little daughter of my will, you must know that my love is so great that it needs to be unleashed, and to entrust its secrets to the one who lives in my will, so that making her aware of everything, we may love with one love, and it may repeat in her all that I did within myself. Listen then, daughter, the excesses that my love reached, making me do things unheard of and incredible to created minds. Coming upon earth, I wanted to make myself into one Jesus for each creature that had existed, was existing, and was going to exist. Therefore, everyone had to have his own Jesus, completely his own, at his disposal. So each one had to have my conception to remain conceived in me, my birth to be reborn, my tears to be washed, my infantile age to be restored and to begin his new life, my steps to guide his own, my works to make rise his works in mine, my pains as balm and strength for his pains, and as repayment of any debt incurred with the divine justice, my death to find again his life, my resurrection to rise again completely in my will for the glory he had to give to his Creator. And all this with highest love, with reason, with justice, and with highest wisdom. My celestial Father had to find in me as many of my lives for as many creatures he had given and was going to give to daylight, in order to be satisfied, glorified, and repaid for his great love. Although not everyone would take this life of mine, my celestial Father demanded my life in order to be glorified for everything he had done in the work of creation and redemption. I can say that as soon as man subtracted himself from my will, the glory that was due to my divine Father ceased. So if I didn't form from myself one Jesus for each existing creature, the glory of the celestial Father would have been incomplete, and I cannot do incomplete works. My love would have waged a war against me if I hadn't formed of myself many Jesuses first for our own decorum and glory, and then to give this complete good to each creature. Therefore, our greatest pain is that, in spite of the many of my lives available for each one, some don't recognize them. Some don't even look at them. Some do not use them. Some offend them. Some just take the scraps of my life. Few are the ones who say, I do the life of Jesus with Jesus. I love like Jesus loves, and I want what Jesus wants. These creatures are, together with me, the return of the glory and the love of creation and redemption. But even if not all of these lives of mine serve to the creature, they admirably serve to the glory of my divine Father, since I did not come on earth only for the creatures, but also to reintegrate the interests and the glory of my celestial Father. Oh, if you could see what a beautiful court these many lives of mine form around our divinity. And when love and glory pour out of these lives, you would remain so enraptured that it would be difficult for you to go back into yourself. Jesus kept silent. I remained with the scene before my mind of so many Jesuses for as many existing creatures. But I had a thorn in my heart that tortured me and embittered me, down to the marrow of my bones, for a person very dear to me and necessary to my poor existence who was in danger of death, and I wanted to save this person at any cost. Therefore I took the divine will. I made it all mine, and in my pain I said to Jesus, Jesus, your will is mine. Your power and immensity are in my power. I don't want it, so neither must you want it. My God, I felt as if I were battling a power, and in order to win, my mind had brought itself before the divinity, while I was placing around it the expanse of heaven with all the stars in prayer, the vastness of the light of the sun with the force of its heat, the entire creation, in prayer, and also the seas of power and love of the Queen of Heaven, the pains and the blood shed by Jesus, like many seas around the divinity, all in prayer. And then the many Jesuses for each creature, so that they might give a sigh, a prayer, to obtain what I wanted. But what was not my surprise and commotion together in seeing and hearing that the many Jesuses of all the creatures prayed to obtain what I wanted? I remained confused in seeing so much goodness and divine compliance. May he always be thanked and blessed, and may all be for his glory. End of February 20th. Fiat.